Welcome to another episode for Deconstruction Friday. And this week we are going to continue deconstructing something. And the topic for this week is custom widgets in Flutter. So we are going to dissect custom widgets in Flutter, how to create our own custom widgets. So we are going to build upon what we learned last week about named parameters and how that is used into actually creating a custom widget in Flutter, which essentially is how the Flutter framework is built upon. So it's built upon smaller pieces of widgets that you can create and put them together to make an actual application. And that's what we're going to be dissecting in this video. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get to it. Perfect. So continuing here with our studies, our dissection, right? We're dissecting, deconstructing certain ideas here. I want to further continue showing you how wonderful it is that we are given this liberty when constructing our widgets or creating, in this case, ultimately our applications, right? So we said here we return a scaffold. Obviously, we could have returned any other, such as a container or anything else, right? So you know that we return scaffold here because we want to have an up bar, as you can see like this, and we want to put it a title, says dissect, and so forth. Maybe say deconstruction. Maybe this is more appropriate. Either way, okay? So we have that there. Now, so going back to this idea that we can return any widget here, what would prevent us from actually going down here? I'm going to show you something. I'm going to create a class called person to begin with, right? Okay, so a class person here. I'm going to say string name, and string again is going to be last name. Okay, so I'm going to prove a point here, answering another question. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to create a constructor, command and create a constructor, and I'm going to add the constructor as such. Now, I'm going to put this at the top here. Now, you notice here is the constructor of person. It has to have the same name as the class. You should know this by now. All right, great. So we are constructing here. We have a constructor that says this name, this last name. So we're constructing, making sure that name and last name are indeed being constructed when the person class is created. Now, let's go back to what we said before. We said the scaffold, if we go back here, let's command and click. Scaffold is exactly the same thing, except this one says scaffold extends stateful widget. Just ignore this extends here, right? Inheritance. But notice here how scaffold here also has its constructor. And notice also, very important, when you click on scaffold, you see this rectangle around? And we go here, notice this is also highlighted, which means when we call scaffold, we are actually calling what? Its constructor. So it again validates what we've learned way before about classes. So when we say new class name, or just call the class name, because now in Dart 2 you don't have to put the new keyword, we are doing just that. We are constructing. Makes sense. So that's why we call the constructor. And also we talked about in the last video that now we can specify whether we want to have a named parameter. All of these are named parameters. Why? Because all of them are inside of our brackets, braces I should say, right? Okay, which is different from this person. Because now when we create this person, all we have to do is indeed just say person and pass in a string called name and last name, all of a string as well, which works. That's totally fine. But you noticed this is much better because it makes sense, right? Scaffold, app bar, we know that we need to pass a app bar object or a scaffold. So it's named, right? So it's advantageous to us to create a named parameter for the reasons that I've said before. Now, here's the cool thing. I can make this person here a widget. How? Well, if I say extends, stateless in this case, notice right away I have our person as a widget, but it's not a widget until it has to conform to what a stateless widget really means. In this case, we have to override something or implement, in this case, something, because this is indeed a stateless widget. It's an abstract or an idea of a class. Again, refer back to abstract classes and or interfaces in the previous sections. Okay, so If you understand that now, that means we have to click here and add the missing override. What this does now, it says, well, because you want me to be, in this case the person is saying that, a stateless widget, that means I have to create something for the user interface. This is why we have to pass this build, or in this case, override our build method. Why? Because this is where we have to return. Again, why? Because this is a widget type. Just like we always do string name, that means this name is of type what? String, which means the compiler, the system, expects a string because we said this has to be a string. Same here, which means now I have to say, in this case, return something. What is something? Well, it has to be a widget type. I can go and say return text that will say name and can say last name. Just like that. Okay? Which means now this person as a widget I can call anywhere where it requires me to return a widget. Like what? Well, like here. After our app bar, which I'm still inside of scaffold, the scaffold has another property, another parameter that we can pass called what? Body. And guess what? Look at this. Body, named parameter again, requires what? A widget. What is person? A widget. Why? Because we say extend stateless widget, and furthermore, it returns a widget. You see here? So now I can pass person. Now look, the moment I pass person, it says string name, string last name, right? Which means those are parameters that are needed in order for me to create this widget. Enter, notice I have to pass those. So a lot of help. I can say Paolo, and I can say here Deconstruction. Let's go ahead and run this again. And look at that, Paolo Deconstruction there. Is that amazing? Very nice. You see the difference here? Because body responds or requires any object that is a widget. I can create this person widget here, right? And return a text. And even if I want to, I can make it so that, for instance, I want this to be in the middle of the screen. You know this. I can just go ahead and wrap center around it. Save. Look at that. All of a sudden, it's just in the middle right now. The important thing is I want to show you how to do this. Now, we go back to that thing. Okay, this looks okay, right? But wouldn't it be awesome if it looked just like Flutter wants all of its objects, constructors, or widgets to look like when they're asking what it needs to be fed in order to create a user interface, right? Like what we said with scaffold and app bar, to have a named parameter. We can do that. How? I think you know how to do this. Yes, you put here our braces like this, and voila, that's all. Now this doesn't validate, which means now I have to go back here. Look how beautiful this is. I can say name, look at that. And then I can pass a name. In this case, I can put in single braces, doesn't matter, or single quotes, I should say, and last name is shown. Now, nothing is going to change if we save this. It's still the same, but we know now, look how beautiful it looks. It's more intuitive because we have name, colon, it says we need text, which also means we can change things around in our person here. Let's say if we want this name to actually be, instead of a string, to be a widget, we can say widget as such. Ah, interesting, isn't it? Which means now we have a problem here because now it says, well, the argument type you said is string that we put there, but it needs a parameter type widget. Why? Because we just said here, instead of a string, I wanted a widget. This simplifies our life in a sense that I can literally just go ahead here, instead of passing the string, I can just go ahead and say text and pass Paolo. Save this. Now you notice we have a little problem here. It says text Paolo. The reason why is because inside of here we're passing text, right? So instead, what I can do is get rid of this and just pass name because it's already a widget. The child needs a widget and I'm done. If you save, notice it just says Paolo. I don't have last name anymore because it's just gone. If I want to change this string to be added as well, what I could do is I could wrap this into a container, let's see, like this, and pass in a row inside like that, and pass children, which means here I can just, first children is going to be name, and second children, I can make this a widget as well. I'm going to say last name, which means I have to change a few things here, right? Because now we've changed types. I'm going to say text is shown. Since it's all in a row, we should be able to see Paulo is shown out there. Of course, we changed again to the top because we probably should be here, and instead of container, I could just go ahead and say center. That would work still. Okay, save, and there it is. And since I'm inside of row, I can say main axis alignment, say center like that, and there we go, we're back. And if I wanted, I can put a little padding here between. For instance, I could say add padding to that one, and there we go. There's nice space there. There's so many ways to do this. I just want to show you how all of this can work by starting with a simple idea and follow the rules or follow the recommended way of creating things in Flutter, right? From person class, which was just bare bones, just a model class, we said we want it to be a widget, and we created a constructor, which before was just a normal constructor, but then we decided we want to make it with named parameters, just like scaffold, app bar, and so many others. And look at that. Now it looks really nice, doesn't it? Okay. So again, all this was to answer the question and prove further more how Flutter is constructed, how it allows us to take this one idea, all this object, all this widget, and allows us to create our own simply by maneuvering around what is given to us already. So this is very simple. At this point, you should be able to create advanced applications and so forth. But this answers those questions because we are dissecting, we are deconstructing certain concepts that we've been seeing all along, but now just going a little bit deeper so we can understand more and answering the questions that I've been receiving. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and if you have any questions, go ahead and leave those in the comment below. And don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and also you can go ahead and click on that little bell. That way you can be notified when new videos come up. So it's just very helpful. That way you don't miss out on anything. Again, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and I need your help. So go ahead and leave ideas for other topics you would want me to deconstruct. Again, it doesn't have to be only Flutter or Dart. It can be Java, any programming concept that you want to be deconstructed so you understand better. Go ahead and leave that topic down below so I can create a video on that. Well, thank you so much for being here. Stay well, be well, code well, and I'll see you next time.